Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, "What greater defeat could we suffer than to come to resemble the forces we oppose in their disrespect for human dignity?" Human rights and the survival of humanity are contingent on promoting dignity. Pillars for Dignity CEO Naila Chowdhury and I are once again co-hosting our series, Groundbreaking Conversations. Our theme for this installment revolves around removing the obstacles shackling dignity and peace with our esteemed guest, Roberta Baskin. Dignity and peace are both core values of Pillars for Dignity and Destination Peace International. With great pride and anticipation, I am handing this over to a global messenger of dignity and peace, our co-host, Naila Chowdhury.
Thank you, Manny. It is my honor and pleasure to introduce veteran investigative reporter Roberta Baskin. She has won more than 75 journalism prizes, including DuPont Columbia University Awards, George Foster Peabody Awards, the Investigative Reporters and Editors Award, the Radio Television News Director Award, Award for Civic Courage, and numerous Emmy Awards. It does not stop there, including the Ted Yates Emmy Award for Outstanding Service to the Community. She also received the prestigious Nieman Fellowship at Harvard University. The results of her investigations have improved government and corporate practices affecting environmental regulations, healthcare, and consumer protections. More recently, Roberta shifted her focus and changed her role to actively support Aim to Flourish and support organizations and thousands of businesses to achieve the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. She's also a global climate change advocate and an ambassador. Not only that, her humility, humbleness, love, empathy, and compassion to serve humanity makes her a truly exceptional leader. Welcome, Roberta.
Oh,
with this,
it's like my life flashing before my eyes.
It's such a pleasure to have you with us today.
It's lovely to be with you.
With this, I hand over to my co-host, mentor, and a global peace builder, Emanuel C. Perlman. Manny, take it from here.
Thank you, Naila. Roberta, the first question is, what do you think is the greatest obstacle to achieving peace and harmony among nations?
Well, I think that what I worry about most and keeps me up at night is thinking about the growing chasm between the rich and the poor. It's unsustainable and it's unacceptable in a moral context. You know, to have, how many houses does one person need when there are homeless people in the world? We have children who are dying of starvation every day and of diseases that can be prevented. And I think that, one of the great lessons for all of us with the pandemic has been that we are all connected and we can't isolate ourselves really as individuals or as nations. We need to be more collaborative. We need to really join forces and work together towards solutions that we know exist. And, I think about like, what will our children's children look back on us in 100 years, the way we look back on slavery and say, how could that have happened? How could that have been allowed? And people will say, how is that allowed? Where you had this incredible wealth that people have without enough days or years left to spend it all. And our children, it's like 1 in 5 children in America are living in poverty. That's not acceptable. And so, I think it's that. I mean, the other thing that weighs on me is the climate crisis. You know, it's weird to me that less than 2% of philanthropy is going towards solutions to the climate crisis. And the climate crisis is really, you know, if you think in terms of legacy, you know, what are we leaving for our children? We need to leave a world that is in better shape than we're leaving it in now. And we know what the solutions are. We just have to join forces as a world, because it's not about saving the planet. The planet will be here. She will heal. She will figure it out as she has through millennia. But we will not be here if we don't get our act together.
If only the world had more of the wealth that you have and your insights and your compassion. Thank you for that answer. The second question is, what programs and actions can we all take locally and globally to promote dignity and peace in our lives, communities, and our country?
Well, I think that we all just need to live our values, and that goes in terms of what we eat and how we shop and voting and investing, and to think again about legacy. It's like, what are we leaving behind? We want to leave a world that is better than we found it. So we need to think about our children and their children. And, you know, you can't take your stuff with you. And so, you know, I think, well, I'm a stubborn optimist. I'm very worried about the state of the world right now, but I truly believe in hope. And so I love a quote by Professor David Orr that hope is a verb with its sleeves rolled up. And I kind of approach my day that way. I want to be, you know, I worry about stuff at night, but then I roll up my sleeves in the morning and think about, you know, what can I do? I was knocking on doors in Virginia to get the vote out over the weekend, just to remind people the importance of, you know, your civic duty. I'm working on getting better and better about what I eat. I'm not vegan, but I've become much more plant-based in my diet. Again, thinking about, you know, the climate crisis. I put solar panels on my house. I drive an electric car. We all need to like do what we can as individuals, but I also think that it's really important to push our leaders, because that's really, it's about, you know, really being more than hopeful, but somewhat aggressive about getting our leaders to do the right thing in terms of public policy. I mean, you know, right now governments are spending $4.7 trillion around the world in subsidies to the fossil fuel industry. That's ridiculous. Why aren't we converting that money into 100% renewable energy that can create jobs and save taxpayer dollars? And so it's really, public policy is really important in terms of, you know, providing incentives for electrification of cars. We need to get away from combustion engines. And we need to get away from the extraction industry. And we can do it by creating jobs with renewable energy. So I don't know, Manny, did I answer the question? I sort of went off in, yeah, heartfelt soapbox.
As I said earlier, your wealth of insights, information, and compassion are really extremely helpful, and thank you for answering those questions.
I also, I would add that I really do believe in Mother Nature. You know, left to our own devices without the intrusion of human beings, you know, she really does take care of the planet and us. I mean, if we shifted into regenerative agriculture in terms of healthy soils, you know, that pulls carbon out of the air. If we protected nature, and this is part of One Earth, which is, I'm proud to serve on the board of this organization, which has a vision of this healthy, vibrant planet based on rock solid science. So we have these solutions. We just, we know what to do, let's do it.
Last but not the least, Roberta, I want to really sort of have yours sort of stake in with now you work so much with youth through Aim to Flourish because you have the wealth of experience, expertise, and I would say you inspire so many youth who are the custodians of our future. How do we motivate, involve, and inspire them? And how do we put dignity and peace in action? If you could give some examples through your work, it would be really worth hearing.
Naila, you know, I love to talk about Aim to Flourish. It was a, you know, kind of like little project that began 5 years ago at Case Western Reserve University. We actually chose the Sustainable Development Goals before all the nations in the world unanimously voted on them, you know, all of them saying that this is what needs to happen. This is the world's to-do list. And we knew that this is what needs to happen. And so the idea was it's the opposite of what I'd done all my life in my career. I was always doing stories about companies that were doing bad things. And that's, you know, I think that work needs to continue. I mean, you need to call out something if it's wrong, but there's also a need to know who's doing it right. And where are the solutions and how can we have more of that? And so we worked with business schools all over the world in more than 100 countries where we were inviting them to use this platform to learn about the Sustainable Development Goals, do a research project to find an entrepreneur, a CEO, somebody who was leading a company that in some way was helping to achieve one or more of the global goals. And so these young people fired up, got to, you know, meet somebody who they admired, a mentor, do an interview with them and write up that story about what inspired that business leader to do something that is both good and it's about doing good and doing well as a business. Because yeah, we need profitable businesses. That's really an important part of what's going to set us on the right path. And so now we have more than 3,500 stories written by business school students all over the world in more than 100 countries that have showcased a company doing something special in some way, you know, helping to achieve one of the global goals. And then every year we celebrate the 17 best, one for each of the global goals. And that's just been a lot of fun. And the feedback that we get from students is that it really alters how they think about business. What do they want to do as a business leader? What kind of companies do they want to create? Or what kind of companies are they drawn to work in? And so it's been this wonderful kind of cross-generational dialogue between young people going into business and business leaders who are doing good and doing well. And we've also been really celebrating the B Corp movement, which is a movement of thousands of companies that agree to you know, really be audited and to serve not just their shareholders, but to serve their stakeholders, so that if a company is doing well in the environment, but is not treating their own employees well, they will not be able to be a B Corp. And so when I talk about like shopping your values, I look for B Corps. Mm-hmm. I look for those companies. I actually feel like they don't sing their praises, Manny, as the singer in this group. They really should do more in terms of getting the message out about the values that these companies achieve. These are the Patagonias of the world and Ben and Jerry's and you know, many wonderful companies that are really doing good and doing well. And so that's what I mean in terms of shopping our values, not buying from a company that is not, that, you know, that isn't treating its employees or the environment or isn't being transparent or doesn't have diversity on its board. we definitely need more women leaders. You know, that's, you know, it's just basically a fact that, you know, if you're going to invest in a girl, invest in girls' education, because the world benefits from that. And so it's, yeah, it's a time for ecofeminism. You know, it brings me back to, I am fairly obsessed with the climate crisis, and appropriately right now that we have COP26 going on in Glasgow.
Are you joining in COP26?
I'm watching as much of it as I can. I am cheering it along. I actually covered COP9 in Milan back in 2003, and it was not a pretty sight. I mean, it was just a lot of extraction industry lobbyists, you know, really just, you know, making stuff up that there wasn't a climate crisis and there's nothing to worry about. And, you know, all of the stuff that they said for decades that, you know, to look away from the science, to question the science. And we know, I mean, there's no doubt, you know, the world knows because the world is experiencing an existential crisis at this point. So we're at a point where there are certain things that we can't even change. But we are also at this beautiful pivotal moment for civilization where we do know what we can do. We know how to do it. And it's just a matter of collaborating globally, especially the big countries, you know, the United States and India and China, you know, the countries that are the biggest polluters need to be responsible for those countries that are the beneficiaries of our selfishness.
Thank you so much, Roberta. Every time I hear you, I feel your wisdom touches my soul and I get wiser, and I hope all our listeners feel the same. You're amazing. I can't help but get emotional and quote Mata Amrita Nandamai, who says that love, when defined, is compassion, and compassion is accepting others' needs and sorrow as your own. And Roberta, you live by it. You're a true example of it. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I always feel uplifted in conversation with you. And I know that Manny is like your spiritual brother. And so, yeah, I feel honored just to be in connection with you.
The honor is definitely mine and ours. And honestly, the more we hear about dignity and peace, we realize it is much more than our inherent value and worth. It is a sacred trust on us, and it is our responsibility to take care and protect it. We need to think of ourselves as the guardians of dignity and peace, but not just our own. We need to protect it in all its manifestations, in ourselves and others and the world around us, like you're doing, Roberta. We need to collaborate. We from Pillars for Dignity and Destination Peace are committed to help each other and everyone in our journey to an empowered life with dignity and peace. With this, I thank all of you for being with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Naila, and thank you, Manny. It's been a pleasure.